Thank you all for coming. I'm absolutely overwhelmed by the fact you've all come. I'm really delighted. I started to write Resourceful Me because about 3 years ago I had to start getting into my own resourcefulness. I started to look at it and it was a pretty tough time, and that's where Anne came in, because Anne said, "Dean, you really should get some help." And Anne sort of introduced me to the path or the concept of personal development, which was something that I hadn't really been open to before that. And she introduced me to the idea of the books and going and having a look at what was on the bookshelves in the shops, and I started to do that. And as I did, I realized that there was something in this. So I looked at the books, and then Anne gave me a program called the Master Key System to look at, which was really, really interesting. And that opened a new level of thinking for me. So from that, I then started to look at NLP. I then looked at coaching, and I even looked at some of the things going on in the sort of spiritual writings, and started to look at Zen and Buddhism and things like that, just to see what was going on there. But they all had one thing in common. When it came down to it and you got down to the nitty-gritty, they all said, the answer is within you. And I thought, okay, the answer's within me. What does that actually mean, the answer's within me? It didn't feel like it was in me at that moment in time, I've got to tell you. It really did feel like it was somewhere else. But as I looked, I realized and saw that actually there is nothing written about resourcefulness. I was doing all this research and I thought, well, why don't I start putting it together? So I started to write it, and it started to come together, and it sort of felt right. And it fitted in with something else that I was doing as I was starting my business, I Want to Be. And I put it together, not as a book like you see today, but as a workbook, as a sort of an interactive workbook to try and help not only myself, but other people get into what resourcefulness is. And when I'd done that, I thought, well, actually, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it properly. I need to find someone to help me publish it. And I approached a couple of people, and they said not interested. And then I was introduced to Vicky. And Vicky is here today. Vicky is the managing director of Callisto Green, who published me. And without her vision of what this could be, wouldn't be sitting here today, standing here today. I wouldn't have a book. So just sort of taking it through then, what the book does is try and identify what I've called core qualities that we all have. So I did actually come around to the idea that all of this stuff is inside us, and what I've tried to do is identify and put some words to that, so that instead of going, well, what is it that's inside me, you can actually read something and say, oh, I get it now. And of course, you're never going to capture the complexity of what we are, but it's a start point. And I've identified 29 core qualities, and emanating from those core qualities, about another 150 to 160 further abilities and skills that come out of those core qualities. So that's really what the book does. As I've talked to people about this, one of the questions that always comes up is, can we learn resourcefulness? And the conclusion that I've come to is that resourcefulness is a mindset, it's the way we think, and it's whether or not we can have an open approach to what we've got inside us. Because it is already there, it's a question of whether we realize it's there and we can access it when we need it. And it's understanding that there's some stuff that gets in the way. Some of that's our beliefs, some of it's our past experience, and some of it's just the way we are. So what I'd like to do now, if you're all up for it, is just have a few games. Just have a bit of fun. I'm going to need some volunteers, but just to illustrate the idea of resourcefulness. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to have a look at is something the brain can't do. Too often nowadays, there is this sort of idea that we can set our mind to do whatever we want to do, and we've just got to think positively enough about it, and we will be able to do it. Well, I'm afraid there's some realities about the way things are, and that's not always the case. So we're just going to demonstrate that now, okay? So what I'd like you to do is I'd just like you to raise your left leg a little bit, and I'd like you to start moving it in a clockwise direction. Yeah? Okay. Now with your left hand, I'd like you to point with your left hand, okay? And I'd like you to draw the number 6. Keep, that's it. So keep your left leg going clockwise at the same time and try and draw.
Oh dear. Am I really that bad?
It's one more time. Okay, thank you. You're not bad at all. It's impossible. You cannot do it. And the reason you can't do it is both of those actions are being driven by the right-hand side of the brain. And the right-hand side, it can't do both things because it's, if you notice, drawing a 6 is a anti-clockwise action, whereas the leg was trying to go clockwise. It's just an illustration that actually, we can't always do everything, and the brain simply won't let us do it, okay? So we're now going to look at something which is the brain can do, but only once it becomes aware that it can do it. So what I'd like you to do on this one is to stand with your side, your right-hand side, touching the wall. The right foot tight up against the wall. Yeah, if you could get absolutely square on. Yeah. And now try and get your right ear, or as close as you can, onto the wall. Okay? Now lift up your left leg. Okay. All right. Okay. There's a reason. There's a reason that you can't do it, and that is when you try and stand on one leg, the body automatically tilts to counterbalance, and because the wall's there, you can't counterbalance. So it sends a message up here saying this isn't safe. If I do this, I'm going to fall. Okay, so it won't let you lift your leg up. However, I saw you two nearly did it, so there was a feeling there that you sort of thought you could. So what we're going to do this time, now that you know that that's what's going on, I want you to try something. And that is, when you're in that position, lift your leg up, but allow yourself to fall on it. Okay? So just allow that overbalancing to happen and see whether or not that lets you lift your leg off the ground. Now, it's usually quite a quick thing. You just have to take it off quickly and then come over. Yeah? That's it. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. But that's just an illustration of, I presume everybody's aware of the idea of limiting beliefs, and those tend to be beliefs that we have inside, but there are limiting factors that are inside of us that we're not even aware of. That's an example of one, but it's also an example of when you become aware of those sorts of factors, you can actually overcome it. So something that is unconscious, you can actually overcome when you become aware of it. So to me, that's quite an important principle behind the idea of resourcefulness, because it's all well and good to have identified all of these aspects, but if you're not aware of them, how do you know they're there, and how do you know what to do about it? So the last exercise that we're going to do is called concentration versus focus. Concentration and focus are very similar, but they are slightly different. So what I'd like you to do is just put your arm out like that with a nice relaxed sort of feel, not too tense. Okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push up, and I want you to concentrate on resisting me with all of your force so I can't bend your arm, okay? You pushing?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. I didn't hurt you?
No, no.
Okay. But you couldn't stop me moving
No.
your arm? Okay. I want you to do something different now. See Russ at the back with his glasses on? Louise, you better just move out of the way here. Right. This time, I want you to point your finger like a gun.
Oh, like
Yeah.
that. Sorry.
So still have it bent. I want you to imagine that you've got a laser beam coming straight through your arm, aimed right between the eyes of Russ.
Well, I
Okay?
have to go higher.
Okay. Russ, if I didn't think you could take it, I wouldn't do it, okay? Now, what I want you to do, I want you to imagine that beam going all the way through,
Yeah.
and this time all I want you to do is concentrate and focus on that beam not moving from the middle of Russ's forehead, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to start pushing now, okay? So keep it focused on there. Okay, I'm not going to do any more.
No.
I mean, I was pushing as hard as reasonably possible there, okay? And I couldn't move. Oh, sorry, I'm blocking, but I don't know whether you could see or not, but actually I could not move Pauline's arm the second time round. And that is the difference between concentrating in a general way and having an absolute focus. So I hope that gives you an idea of sort of moving from something you can't do, that you physically can't do, through something you can start to do when you become aware, to actually being able to enhance your strengths or power when you really understand some techniques of doing it.